All right. Hello, hello. Once again, we're back with the Red Peace Machine. I am here with your cast of wonderful characters. Let's go around and give a one-word check-in. How are folks feeling? Susie?
Um, eh.
All right, Susie, that's your word. That's it. We're cutting the mic.
M-E-H. It's called M-E. It's spelled M-E-H. Period.
All right. Roy, peace.
Doing good. Good.
Good.
It's 2 words.
I know. Good.
And then our dynamic duo, Roy War and Banafsha.
I am feeling liberated. I had a very good sort of excising sources of drama from my life yesterday. It was a damn good day. So I'm feeling very light and happy right now.
Congested.
Yeah.
Good word. Good word.
Yeah.
In more ways than one, or
No,
Mostly
he's
upper
regular. He's
respiratory.
regular.
he's
Roy War, would you say you're feeling as congested as Biden's upcoming pieces of legislation that he'll try to pass through?
brilliant segue.
It's called mastery.
Dang.
So, yeah. I think we've just seen the end of Biden's administration. It's basically over now because literally nothing can pass unless they do something about the filibuster.
Goodbye and good night.
Yeah.
What was the death knell for you?
What was that?
What was the death knell? The thing that said, "This is it. This is over. It's not going to pass. This is what we're going to see for the next few years."
Well, so the fact that we when we say we're trying to get rid of the filibuster, that's not really true because the Senate really already got rid of the filibuster. But
Okay, can you just describe what the filibuster is? Because I am even confused about that. Like, I thought there was no more filibuster. Now I find out there's,
okay, so the filibuster, the term is a piracy term. And basically the idea was that the minority in one of the 2 houses of Congress would talk until past the moment when you were supposed to vote on a bill. And then because they talked past that moment, the moment to vote on the bill has expired and you can't vote on the bill anymore. So it would sort of kill the bill. Real early on, the United States House of Representatives decided this was a bad idea and passed a rule.
when was this?
I don't know when it was, but it was in the 19th century, shortly after the
Oh.
filibuster started.
Mhm.
They passed a rule saying that each member of the House would have 5 minutes. Technically, it can be any amount of time, but usually it's 5 minutes to talk. And then they would make sure to schedule the vote well after 435 times 5, right? So that there was no way you could talk past that moment. In the Senate, that never went away. And just for the record, in principle, I like this. In practice, I hate it. But in principle, I like it. I like the idea that the minority party has to be consulted on legislation.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you would end up with majority tyranny, right? Where for 4 years, or well, 2 years, because our congressional sessions are essentially 2 years long. For 2 years, one party would just simply tyrannize the country. So the idea that you could be forced to compromise is great. Having said that, that's not what happens in practice. Now, it used to. So in the 1960s, the Senate decided that we were spending too much time on the filibuster. So they came up with a compromise called cloture, and then they changed the rules for cloture in the 70s. I'm just going to tell you the rules for the 70s because there's no point in talking about the original rule. But the rule is, since the 70s, that you have to have 60 votes for a cloture. So anybody can call for cloture. Cloture.
This is in the Senate.
This is in the Senate because the House doesn't have the filibuster anymore.
Mm.
A cloture vote ends the debate on a bill. So if you don't have the cloture vote, you could conceivably do an actual filibuster. If you have the cloture vote and it passes, then there's no possibility for a filibuster because the debate on the bill has been terminated. If it fails, what the Senate agreed was we will just accept that a filibuster did take place and the bill dies. So that's so instead of actually having people get up there and take turns peeing in a diaper, talking until they can't talk anymore, and then tag team over to the next person and eating up all that Senate time where they don't get anything done anyway. What they decided to do was they would just have a vote, and if 60 senators voted yes, the filibuster died. If 59 or less vote yes, then the filibuster is accepted to have happened, even though it didn't actually take place. But that worked in the beginning. That there was really no problem with it. If you look at the number of times a filibuster has taken place from the 1830s until 2006, it was about 4 a year. From 2007 until 2015, when the Democrats lost the Senate, in that 8-year span of time, it was 80 a year. And two things happened to cause that shift. What was it, Susie?
Obama.
Well,
Obama.
So part of it was Obama, but in 2007, Obama wasn't president, right? He didn't become president until 2009. So part of the problem was John McCain, actually. John McCain went on a campaign to get rid of earmarks. So earmarks are where I have a bill, like one of the bills that he went off on was the bill that created I-69, Interstate 69. We still haven't figured out where it starts because it's going to start on the Texas-Mexico border, but it basically ends, I think it's in either Indiana, Ohio, or Michigan. So it basically connects Canada to Mexico at an angle through the middle of the United States. And I think it hits, I don't remember, 12 states, 13 states, 15 states, something like that. Well, that would give you 30 Senate votes if it's 15 states. I'm making that number up because I don't remember how many it goes through. Well, to get something passed, you then need to get another 11 states on board. If you got 15, right, that gets you to 30. You need 52, assuming there's no filibuster. So how do you get those other states? But because there's a possibility of filibuster, you probably want to have 30 states on board. That gets you your 60 senators. So what you had to do was go, New York, what do you need? Because we're not going to put I-69 through New York, so you get something. California, what do you want? Alaska, what do you want? And of course, Alaska famously asked for the bridge to nowhere that was going to connect an island off the coast of Juneau, Alaska.
Russia.
I think it was Juneau. Anyway, to the mainland. And basically it was $386 million to connect 50 people to the mainland. And it would have been cheaper to buy each person their own individual plane that landed in the water and hire a pilot and do the maintenance and pay for the fuel costs for the life of those 50 people than it was to build this bridge. And really the reason they were doing it is a bunch of corrupt Alaskan politicians had bought land on that island. And once they built the bridge, they could then do a housing project on it and sell that land at a huge profit. And John McCain, Maverick, gets up and goes, earmarks are disgusting. And he led a campaign to end earmarks. Well, there is now literally no incentive on earth for any senator to ever vote for anything because they can't affect and improve the lives of their corrupt, rich asshole friends. So that's half the equation. The other half of the equation is that the Republicans decided once Obama was elected, but the idea started percolating in their heads even before then when the Democrats captured the House and the Senate in 2006, that they were going to do scorched earth, that they were going to vote against every single policy that Obama put forward, even if it was a policy they absolutely loved, because they were going to try to bring the United States to its knees to force the American public to vote Republican. And they were hoping to flip the presidency back in 2012 and capture both houses of Congress. And they, of course, failed. But in the process, they turned Obama's last 6 years into hell because he couldn't get any legislation passed.
With all of this voter, I know we didn't necessarily want to get into this too much, but with all the voter suppression laws that are being proposed in Texas, even, but primarily, obviously, Georgia, um, how is that even? I mean, it seems to me like the Republican Party wants fascism. I mean, it was obvious, it was kind of obvious before, but now they're saying we don't want people to vote unless they're going to vote for us. And what's the point? Why not just take over in a military coup? I feel like we don't have any.
They were going to
I
go
don't,
along with that.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's what January 6th
Trump
was.
was trying to do that, and they were like,
but they are doing it. I
peeing
mean, they just,
themselves with glee. Yeah.
but they just did it in Georgia, and and there's still bills like crazy all over the place to try to suppress it. Here in Texas, as far as I know, Abbott would love it.
Well, so I don't remember what the event was, but it just happened recently. Ted Cruz was caught on audio saying that the Republican Party's new agenda is voter suppression, and that's their entire goal. Their entire strategy is to just basically make it so that people can't vote. That's nothing new. We've been doing that since the beginning, right? One of the crazy things that I think most Americans don't realize, like if you ask the average person, they probably don't know it's Wyoming, but if some people do. Wyoming is the first state to give women the right to vote. But the crazy thing is it was actually the sixth state to give women the right to vote. There were 5 colonies during the British imperial period that had the right, where women had the right to vote. They lost the right to vote because those colonies, once they became states, slowly began to terminate women's right to vote. And so right from the beginning, our goal was, how do I increase my power at the expense of everybody else? I mean, it can't be a surprise to anybody that capitalism is our economic system, because it's our political philosophy too. I need to screw you before you screw me.
It's all about domination.
So the Democratic Party used to be the master of voter suppression. And they're the guys who created all the Jim Crow laws. They created the black-only primaries, right, in 1935. I wish it was 1835, 1935.
When did they split? It used to be the Democratic Republicans, right?
Well, the Democratic Republican Party was renamed by Andrew Jackson to punish them for their loyalty to John Quincy Adams. And I want to say they renamed the party sometime after 1829. And so the Democratic Republican Party still exists. It's called the Democratic Party. Okay. The reason the Republican Party named itself the Republican Party is their whole philosophy was, we lost Thomas Jefferson's old party, let's bring it back. It's not true, it got renamed. So the ridiculousness of it all is that our 2 political parties are named after the same party and both claim to be the same party.
Yeah, one thing I wonder is when we have like a legislator or legislators across the country, right, at the state and the federal level, that are more and more restricted in their ability to pass actual legislation or do anything, we inevitably see like a rise in executive power or an expansion of executive powers, right? Am I reading that correctly? Like, are those 2 things sort of linked to each other, right? If the Senate can't do anything, if the House can't do anything, then the executive inevitably takes up and does more and more governance.
So that's definitely been true recently. So just for the record, executive orders have been around since George Washington. George Washington issued the first executive orders. They're probably iffy constitutionally, but from the beginning, we've always realized that if the president didn't have this ability, the government wouldn't function. So I think they're just, you can get nitpicky on, wow, that's a legislative power, why does the executive have it? But in reality, I think we just have to have that. And every president had a different number of executive orders. Like it fluctuated wildly. Some presidents were big into it. Some presidents were reluctant to do it. I'm pretty sure every president did at least 3. I think 3 is the fewest ever. When FDR became president, he really went nuts on the executive orders. And I think most people recognize now that it was necessary because it was the only way to navigate through the crisis of the Depression. And then
Yeah.
World War II comes along, and so he's got these two crises that he's managing at the same time. But what that did was it really opened up the idea that the president had a lot of legislative leeway. Having said that, even throughout the Cold War period, with all the partisanship that we had, Congress sort of understood, whether it was the Democratic Congress and a Republican president or a Republican, there weren't very many Republican Congresses during the Cold War period. In fact, there were none because during the Cold War period, the Democrats owned the House. But the Senate would occasionally flip Republican. And the understanding was that it's that guy's the president. This is the law he wants. Let's pass it, but let's get something for it. And we'll make him compromise with us. And right up until Reagan.
Yeah, but this is still when there's a positive, this is still when the opposing party, this party still has a positive view of government and what government can do, right? They're still thinking about the federal government as something that has and should engage in actions at the governmental level, which I think is different from today, right? Today there's just a radical limiting of any kind of government intervention at the federal level.
And that's Reagan. So what happened was Reagan comes along and he says, we need to break the federal government. We need to knock it down a notch. And the reason we need to do this is because we need to get people off of welfare. We want to get people off of dependency on the government because it's hampering capitalism. And we need to break the unions. And he had this agenda. And lower taxes for the rich so the rich can get richer and raise taxes on the middle class. That was his agenda. And part of that was to create an ideology of distrust. The federal government is your enemy. We need to break the federal government. How can we do this? We can do it by cutting taxes, and we'll just deprive it of money. And so there's a whole now political philosophy in the United States where, 40-something% of Americans believe the government is the enemy. Which is hilarious in a democracy. Like if we were an authoritarian state, that makes sense. But in a democracy, that means that the people are the enemy.
Which it kind of, I think there are a lot of people who don't want to get this vaccine. And I think it's because they don't trust the government. I mean, that's what the majority of them I hear talking about. I've heard one woman say, "Oh, I've never put anything in my body before." And I'm like, I don't know how you make it without eating, but okay. But anyway, so I think that the distrust of the government is only going to get deeper. Q may be gone at this point because he's screwed up so many premonitions, or she, I think it's the he, but
I think it evolves though, right? That Q stuff evolves and towards
I'm sure it does.
It's like, oh well, actually this is happening and like, oh,
the world ends in 14 days. I mean, even 21. I mean,
just like every religion.
It's always a story.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm sorry. I just wanted to throw that in, that we just still have this horrible, this mistrust and distrust of the government. It's horrible. We have no leadership right now.
And Susie, you say that this is a distrust of the government, and Roy, you're saying that this distrust of the government in a democracy is a distrust of the people.
Yeah.
But,
so
what way to articulate to the people than to suppress their vote, right?
I'm sorry. I just wanted to add something, that just to add to what Susie was, the insight that Susie brought. I just want to say, I mean, just talking about the virus, something came up for me. I mean, some folks in this country have real good reason to have distrust of the government. I'll just, maybe Roy can go more into this, but there was such a thing as the Tuskegee experiment. That was a thing.
Wormwood.
All of it, right? Yeah. So there is a distinction between the people and capitalism and the stewards of capitalism. So Yeah, there, I just wanted to, yeah.
So there is a huge reason to distrust the state. Not just the examples you get, but just think of prohibition, where right they're making illegal alcohol, and the federal government is literally poisoning the alcohol to prevent its use as a drink. And the next thing you know, the mob, the Italian mafia, is hiring chemists to counter the poison. And so there's a war between the federal government trying to poison the public and an illegal organization trying to save the public's life. I mean, and you can go on and on and on and on. What happens, though, is instead of Americans educating themselves on what the federal government has really done that is wrong, like overthrowing governments overseas, experimenting on Black people, slavery, genocide of the Native Americans, the brutalization of Asian Americans and the Hispanic population. Instead of focusing on what really happened, we go down these crazy rabbit holes of conspiracy theories and believe that there's an Illuminati, a group of crazy Bavarians who are secularists from the 1700s, who are somehow 400 years later controlling us. It's just, there's such QAnon and the Illuminati are such outrageous, outlandish, nonsensical things that it turns out that the whole Illuminati conspiracy was created on purpose by a guy trying to show people that these types of conspiracy theories were nonsensical.
Yeah, and it was only not that long ago.
Yeah.
And everybody thinks Illuminati's been around since, Christ died, and they had to protect they had to protect true identity. Come
But
on, man.
the belief in these kinds of conspiracy theories is reflective of, like, right, there's like a folk or people understanding that something is up here. There's a history here that we're not aware of. Something is up here. There's right, like I can point to real life conspiracy, the Contra affair, all of this stuff, or all the things the FBI, CIA have done, the sterilization campaigns, all of this stuff. So there is the feeling that these things exist and are out there, but then there's a misdiagnosis of which are those things and how do they actually work.
Exactly. And I think part of that is people's attachment to certain things. For example, I really want to believe capitalism is a good thing. Okay, but I have all this evidence that it's not. How do I make this make sense in my head? And so you end up twisting this illogic knot around your brain until you cut off the blood supply. And then, of course, you could do this with religion too. Like, I really want to believe my nonsensical set of myths, but in contrast to what's really happening, clearly they don't jive. So I need to find somebody else to scapegoat to make them the villains in this story. And I think that's what happens. The tragedy is that there's real serious political consequences.
Yeah.
Our infrastructure is falling apart. We've done nothing for the environment. The global system is falling apart. The United States isn't producing anything. The United States is finished if we don't do something to change the way we do our economic system.
Yeah.
We're definitely
and will Georgia be consulting voters on those changes to our economic system?
Right. And so what does the Republican Party do? It decides to dedicate itself to suppressing votes. That's its new agenda. Not defeating abortion, not killing Muslims, but trying to wipe out brown and Black votes.
But that's deliberate. It made the most sense for them, right? They have decades worth at this point of reports that would say, hey, there's a demographic shift going on. Y'all either need to appeal to minorities or the party is done for within the current state of affairs. And they said, okay, let's change the current state of affairs and let's make sure these folks can't vote in order to continue to exist.
And so that I mean, it's how do we counter that, I guess, is the question. If these folks are shutting polls down and making people drive 2 hours to vote, but not on Sundays, because what I loved about this is they had to preserve the Sabbath, which is not Sunday. So I don't understand and I feel like I say I don't understand a lot, but what do we do to counter this? How do we I mean, the strolls to the polls are being ended because they're not going to vote on Sundays. They're limiting our early voting. They are making it so you have to like have 6 forms of ID.
Yeah, I saw
how do
that
we
it
counter
included.
this?
I saw it also included. You can't give food and water to people in
Exactly.
Yeah,
line.
Yeah.
yeah.
Like what? Yeah.
So what is this? You know?
I think it's
mean-
already being done. I think the in the last few years, certainly since Obama, but definitely because of the movement for Black Lives, there is a real sort of linking that's happening between white supremacy and the Republican Party. And it's being revisited, rebroadcast over and over and over again, the linkage. And it's becoming more and more solid in the imagination of the American people.
Yeah.
That you cannot
But,
separate one from the other. And this is really hurting them. And when we just had the conversation about when Ramesh, you just brought up that, you know, they literally tried to appeal to people of Blacks and people of color, and they just couldn't, because there's no way. Nobody's being fooled anymore. So of course the next move is to suppress.
What the
Yeah,
hell do you
is
have
this
to
work?
lose?
You said that this is harming them, though. I don't remember the phrase that you used, but you said that this isn't working for them. Is this not working for them, or are they being punished at the polls or in any capacity from this strategy or from this link to more and more explicit link to white supremacy?
I think the way that the culture is shifting and moving towards making the connection between the Republican Party and white supremacy, it is just a matter of time before it crumbles.
I'm so worried that it won't crumble.
This is not sustainable. It is not sustainable because the public is moving. I mean, just the very polarization of white supremacists proudly wearing badges now versus everyone else. I mean, this is all sort of signs of the last breath, the crumbling. I just don't see any other, right? It's either civil war or sort of the vestige has to fall off. So I think this is already happening. I just don't see how and we all sort of see it. And I feel like every time we talk or I hear anybody, or I even listen to the news, it's like there's this untold presumption that these assholes are white supremacists, and it's just a matter of time.
But it depends on who
I
you're
feel like-
listening to and what radio station you're listening to. I mean, because
the non-white
easy.
supremacists.
It's easy to get in an echo chamber, right? But nobody wants to go listen to these people because we basically know their message. But
I'm talking about ABC, NBC, CBS. I'm talking about not even NPR. I'm talking about, we just recently got a television and now we can watch like the news.
And I would counter that all 3 of those have fairly liberal leaning news coverage. I just having
Yeah, of course they do.
Yeah, so I guess
Liberal, not progressive. It's okay.
Right.
Laura. You're gonna be okay.
just said more liberal. It's all right.
I'm gonna say
not
right.
saying-
I'm gonna say
Well-
they're all right leaning.
Oh
It's
yeah, but
because-
liberal is right wing.
Right. It's it's become very centrist.
No, it's center right.
That's
It
true.
has
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
I do want to say though,
the voice of
why-
reason.
the reason why I'm bringing those news stations up is because they, and I might be wrong, but in my eyes, they seem to reflect where culture is and going. Right? At least
Well-
where it is, let's say where culture is.
I think it's from an identity perspective only, though. It's from and there's nothing wrong with identity, but it's all like, oh, this person's Black. You can't say nothing against this person, even though the person might be doing
Of
something
course,
totally wrong.
none of it is deep. That would be progressive.
Yes, we agree with that.
Yes,
Okay.
of course.
Yeah.
So liberals kind of go with the flow. Liberals go with where the wind is blowing. There isn't much there's not deep
Okay.
reflection, none of that, obviously. But
So yeah, that's
Okay.
kind of
yeah,
Okay, I wanted to
Hang
make
on.
that distinction.
decisions to me reflect the where the sort of the compass in the culture stands. And
Yeah,
So,
I think you're seeing this situation and you're saying that there are these tensions here, and these tensions are escalating, and this polarization is escalating, and it's becoming more and more apparent to you, even in this popular media sense. But you're saying that should mean that we are leading to a place where this clash has to play out in some kind of explicit way, or some kind of resolution has to happen. What I think is that this tension is sustainable. I think that this sort of state of slow decay and slow increasing polarization will sustain itself and could go on for decades.
I
Right?
don't
Because
think black folks are gonna I don't think black folks are gonna let that happen. I think there is such momentum, there is such awareness. If it weren't for black folks, I would say you're right. But no,
But
we've got leadership.
do you remember the push for the ERA and how all ramped up all the women were, and we're going to make this happen, and they marched on Washington, and I'm not talking about not long ago, I'm talking about in the 70s, right? And so but guess what? ERA didn't pass.
yeah.
twice.
We just gave up and we said, oh, we've done enough. People get it. They get it. But we're still making 75 cents on the dollar.
I blame Texas for that, by the way.
And I think backlash
Texas
is a
has
real thing. And I think that the pendulum can swing very, 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 very far one way. But having that, trajectory, it's going to come back. And I feel like this backlash that we suffered with Trump was this pendulum going all the way the other way. So it is swinging back our way. I think, Benefsha, like you're saying that, maybe this time it'll get to the point where we can hold on to that cloche, but I just don't know. That clapper.
Let me introduce one more thing into this, which is that white people don't make babies. The fact that there's no white immigration to the United States from Europe, and white people in the United States just aren't making babies, makes it so that at some point we're going to reach a demographic point where white supremacy won't matter, because whites will just be a minority like everybody else.
I worry that it'll expand though, right? So like the fact that Malala Yousafzai Elementary is here, that Fort Bend district is a big South Asian and Asian American district. Consistently, they're okay with, and they vote for figures on the right for the Republican Party. The Republican Party for that county or whatever has appointees for to talk to and communicate and liaise with the Desi population, the Muslim population, the Asian American population. And these are people who are happy to be fully Texan in their projected sense of what Texan is, which is to go out and buy guns and vote Republican and act and behave in a certain kind of way, to want to have the same rhetoric around like welfare and immigration and all of these things. We are the good immigrants. We immigrated in the right way. Look, we were educated and we proved ourselves and we got to immigrate. Why should these people coming over the border be allowed here? We need stricter immigration. It's all of this stuff. And so I worry that, even if there's a demographic change, then the category of whiteness may just flex and expand and look like something a little bit different 40, 50 years from now. The same way that it has done, right? So like the percentage of people who are Anglo and Anglo descended is something that we aren't even at least aware of or conscious of as that being a separate category from whiteness. Irish Americans get to be lumped up in there. Italian Americans get to be lumped up in there. All of that.
Yeah, I hear you, Ramesh. The worry that brown folks can get confused, more confused, and are confused is real, which is why you and I are part of the Interconnecting Arabs, Muslims, and Middle Easterners, and why the core of what we do is just anti-racism among brown folks. I get all that, but I just I really don't think that. I mean, this might not go anywhere. Yes, it might just crumble. We might, all of that. But but we can't even assume
Yeah.
that is going to happen, because what good would that do? So we just have to assume that will do the work, and it won't, and everybody just has to do their part and work within their own communities, white folks with white folks, brown folks with brown folks.
It's also worth pointing out that 3/4 of Asian Americans vote Democrat, whereas 2/3 of Latinx Americans vote Democrat. In other words, Asian Americans are more solidly Democrats than even the Latinx population, which I find really fascinating, because
it's the same for Muslims too. 2/3 vote. Yeah. Muslims
And do you think that's okay, so Muslim, I'm wondering if that's mostly the Latino experiences on their experiences on the border, or is it all over America? Because I know a lot of Texans who are Mexican, either they've become Americans or they were born here but they've got Mexican uh in their blood, or people who've just literally come over here, like you said, did it the right way, right? Whatever. Who really, really dislike Mexicans coming across the border without having it done right. I mean,
that's called internalized racism. It's called self-hate. It's
insane.
called wanting to be white because it's safer. It's all those things.
And I think now it even says on your doctor's intake, on some of mine anyway, it says white/Hispanic.
I'll tell you something. Roy and I just took a spring break trip to New Mexico, and we were talking. We went into an art gallery, met this white dude, older white dude. I don't know, he was like 70, 80, really sweet man, had a good conversation with him, extremely racist. And one of the things he kept, one of the things,
Sweet racist.
huh? I mean, he's an old white dude. I mean, it's just the way it is. Oh, yeah. So, but it didn't keep us from having a good conversation with him. Like, what are you gonna do? I'm not, just jump down everybody's throat. That's not an option. Just, I personally don't want to go through life like that. Anyway, so having a conversation with this dude, and he keeps, and I didn't know this, he keeps talking about how and I don't remember what word he was using, the Spaniards here, the Spanish here. I'm like, finally, I think I asked afterwards, I was like, if I open my mouth now, it's gonna go south. So when we came out, I turned to Roy and I said, can you explain this to me? Is there something behind this? And Roy goes, yes, like people with Mexican heritage who live here call themselves Spaniards. And I'm thinking, okay, holy shit.
Yeah, it's called New Spain.
So northern New Mexico, if you look at the Census Bureau data, northern New Mexico has this huge Spanish population. And by the way, part of southern Colorado as well. But if you look at southern New Mexico, it says Mexican. And it's because when you fill out the census data, you write what you want to write for your nation, right? Race is one of the 5 nonsensical categories: white, black, Latinx, well, Hispanic is what it says, and then Asian, Pacific Islander, and then Native American. Those are the 5 imaginary races. I think they should.
Well, they're imaginary, but they actually have.
Right, but I mean, they're excluding orcs and elves, and they don't have goblins on there.
In this country,
I mean, I just think it's bullshit.
In this country, they have actual consequence.
Yes,
they are made up. They are constructed.
You could literally be shot to death.
Yes, but there are actual consequences for that identity.
But when it comes to nation, you write whatever you want. So you could write Martian, for example, and the Census Bureau will write whatever you wrote down. And so the reason why northern New Mexico has this is internalized racism. They really just hate the idea that they're Mexican. But the really crazy thing is they should not, under any circumstance, do 23andMe, because if they did, they would find out they are overwhelmingly Native American. They look Native American. They have Native American cultural traits. And what's a Mexican? It's a Native American who was conquered by the Spaniards.
So this
It's
concept of the border crossing them hasn't
Yeah.
even, I don't even think they've heard it or they register it. It's like, this is your land. This is yours. The board, like, it's a stolen land, basically.
They need to take a note from Oklahoma, right? Take a note from Oklahoma.
Yes,
Look what Oklahoma's doing.
Yes.
Go to Oklahoma, see what they're doing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Speaking about the border, we recently had a familiar friend of the podcast, a friend of RPM, visit the border and give us a little bit of a tour of what he saw. Do we want to check out that clip?
Are we going to show that?
Oh, I would love to.
Does anyone still have it pulled up?
I just caught on to what y'all were talking about. Wait a minute, what friend are we talking
You may get it? I'll get it.
You're getting it? Okay.
Hey.
Oh, what was his name?
Yeah.
So it's past
Oh
midnight.
yeah,
He's an
baby.
old familiar.
And the water is right behind me.
Water is
I'm
right
down
behind
the Texas border, along with 18 senators. We made the trip to see the crisis that is playing out. We've already gone to detention facilities that are overrun. Many of them with families, small children. We saw multiple mothers who were nursing infant babies who had just crossed over and were being housed in outdoor holding pens where they were sleeping on the floor and nursing their babies. So
Oh,
it's past
God.
midnight.
So what was in charge, or when they were in charge, they were doing the same thing. So I'm guessing what he wants us to do now is just release them, but on that side of the border. I mean, what are the Republicans' alternatives here? Because I think we already saw them. And it was this, only the woman
Wait, but,
that man, he
I wanna
actually
come-
said that some. Go ahead.
To the video first. I want to come to the video first. How did people encounter that language, that the ways in which he spoke, right? He said overrun. What does that mean here? Does that have any kind of history to it? All of that. What's
Yeah,
the
so, like,
National
overrun.
Geographic style of it? The why does it feel like a reality show? What's going on here? The video
Overrun
itself.
is
Nat
like
Geo
a
Wild.
military
Looks like
term.
Nat Geo Wild. Go for it.
So like you're a small force, a large force comes and they overrun you. That's what happens when a horde attacks, right? So I when I think of overrun,
Ah, the unwashed masses.
Yeah,
the
they're
unwashed
charging us.
masses.
yeah. So I mean,
That'll
his
be
language is
tweeted.
trying to invoke this idea of the brown horde coming across the border. How do we protect our white women?
Yeah. And
Oh,
they're in
yeah,
holding
that's
pens,
true.
right? What do you keep in a holding pen?
Oh yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
The whole
Oof.
thing.
And
Yeah, it's
then, yeah.
ugly.
And then the Nat Geo Wild style documentary.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
He's off in some exotic place telling us the scene in the news from the ground. It's at night, it's hidden, it's obscure.
Vest on, right?
We
The
don't see what's
vest.
going on, and we have to trust our narrator to tell us what's happening. Yeah.
But you're right.
He needed a pith helmet. Why didn't he have that?
Yeah,
Sizable.
exactly.
To go along with his fake Texas accent.
The pipe.
Yeah, and we know he just jumped out of the Jeep, right? He had the Jeep, the military style Jeep. He jumped out of it.
Just needed the
Duck
right-
and roll as the Jeep is still moving behind him.
Yeah.
Guns blazing.
Push its way through the reeds.
So that being said, we clearly understand that this was an inherited issue. The fact that he said there were women nursing their babies is a step up, because they didn't take that infant away from that mother like they were doing in the Trump administration. Maybe they are still doing that, but from what I understand, the unaccompanied are the issue, not families and then pulling them apart anymore. But that's what I understand. So but we can't take away from the fact that there is an issue that Biden needs to address. It's not an infestation and they're not overrunning, but we do need to address what's happening to these poor people when they come over here. What is he gonna do?
I also just want to, sorry, Susie, just building on what you were saying. I feel like so much, I mean, generally what I guess politicians do in general is performance. But so much of what Republicans, especially this particular specimen Republican, does is performance of care. Did they ever in the 4 years during Trump make this trip over there in any capacity to do any, and all of a sudden they are there, and the language, the tone, the lighting, the all of it, the mystery, it's like feigning care, performing, especially after fleeing to Mexico. Like, it's like, but what kills me is how does he do it over and over and over without any shame? And how who does this?
You know the story of Faustus. He sold his soul.
Yeah.
I mean, right? I would say all of these guys who are Q people, including Trump, sold their souls. Maybe not, I mean, and I'm speaking metaphorically, but they totally, I think, made foul deals.
But for the record, this problem that exists at the border was created by Reagan. Before Reagan, we didn't do this kind of nonsense at the border. And the reason he did it was he wanted to make this into a Republican issue. He knew that xenophobia would play with the white public. And so, so he did amnesty. So all the undocumented immigrants, this was the compromise he made with the Democratic Party, because at the time the two parties still compromised. He did amnesty for all the undocumented immigrants already here, and then said, okay, but no more new undocumented immigrants. And that's what created the crisis. It used to be that if you were in Mexico and you wanted to go to Texas, you could just do it, and you would get hired, you would get a job, and then when you were done, you would go back across the border. One of the crazy things about this xenophobic policy that we've created is we've basically trapped a bunch of the Mexican labor in the United States, because they know they might not be able to get back over. So they don't go back and forth, and they just stay permanently because they don't know what the future is. And so the craziness of the racist policy is that it's actually increased the number of undocumented immigrants. It's not to say we didn't have stuff in the past. Like, for example, Eisenhower did a giant roundup. He called it Operation Wetback. And
oh God.
it was great in the 1950s. And he actually, the federal government actually went and rounded up Hispanics at random. So they were grabbing U.S. citizens, and they would take them and put them in Mexico. And then those U.S. citizens had to figure out how to get back. But one of the best parts was literally everybody who wanted to could just simply come back, because there was no real border control. So
I think
Roy, when you say that it's you linked it to Reagan, I wanted to ask a leading question. What else took place at that same time in Central America that may have caused the Central American hordes at our doorstep?
You mean like our psychotic war with the Contradoras against the Sandinistas in Nicaragua? Contra scandal.
Just imperialism in general. Roy, Peace, did you want to say something?
I was gonna say, one thing that sometimes gets lost in the conversation is the why we have so many immigrants and refugees coming to this country, and it's like things like the drug war that they keep going on, things like we're bombing Syria, we're bombing Iraq. These people. I think once we do these things that are just like disrespectful and like totally terrible to these countries. Imperialism, exactly, to these countries. We have an obligation to kind of help out, you know what I mean? If that means bringing folks into our country, that means bringing folks into our country.
I think at this point, if I were a refugee, I'd rather go to Europe. Even with even with all the COVID, I wouldn't want to come here.
All the strains.
Well, the majority
I don't
of
know.
refugees it's worth pointing out the vast majority of the world's refugee population end up in another third world country, because the first world countries, as a general rule, are fucking assholes and don't want to let anybody in. I mean, there were moments like when Merkel let in the 1 million refugees, and everybody's like, "Oh, look at her." But Turkey had 2.5 million refugees. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, that's great that Germany, one of the world's economic superpowers, did this, but they could have let in 2.5 million. The exception, of course, is Sweden, where literally 10% of its population is refugee. But the rest of the first world are just assholes.
So for the last 40 years, this is how we've dealt with Latin America in general, and Central America, South America. We have set up multinationals, worked with the elite, the corrupt elite in these countries, killed farms, killed small businesses, produced poverty across the board. And so this is
200 years.
Well, I mean, most specific, this is seriously, I mean, since Reagan, it's just been, what's that film, Highlander? You got quickening. There's been a quickening of this situation. And I was listening to NPR, I think it was Friday, this new gentleman who's in charge of, what are they calling it now? Homeland Security comes on. And he's so proud of himself. He's talking about how, we are actually going and trying to figure out, we're going to the heart of the problem. We're going to these countries and we're talking to the elites, because we know the elites are, and he's so proud of himself. He's like having this conversation that he thinks nobody else has ever had in the Democratic Party. And Biden is going after the real problem, the corruption at the heart of the elite, blah, blah, blah. And for once, for the first time, I had never heard, I don't remember which reporter it was, but it was one of the anchors for NPR. It was the morning show. Went after this guy. I'd never seen this before. I was like, it was different. It was different. I had never felt this before. But he kept going, I'm sorry, exactly how are you planning on talking to these people? And what do you have? How are you going to bend their arms? Like, what exactly, how do you have power? What are you going to do to them? You have nothing. And he kept saying, no, you have nothing. I was like, wow. Damn. Wow. So even when they are talking about correcting past imperialist BS that they have done, they got nothing. What are they going to do exactly?
So what do you guys, what is it, just going around the horn here? Who thinks that there is a possibility of a civil war? And would it be, if there is one, would it be a bloody civil war?
We should have a weekly Civil War meter, right? They're at level orange.
Right.
That's the final question we ask every week. How closer are we? Let's do a Civil War clock.
I think that's a good idea.
One of the levels needs to be start digging your backyard.
Hide your gun.
Yeah, that's one of the tiers. Start building your bunker.
No, seriously, where are we? I feel like it's imminent. Maybe not in my lifetime, but I feel like it's imminent in this country. And I think it would be quite bloody. And I think it will, within the next 100 years, I can see it happening. I don't see an agreement. How can you agree with fucking crazy people?
I think we've gone a little crazy.
Guns to the Senate.
Drinking the regime change like Kool-Aid, right? Like we absorbed so much rhetoric of regime change, of violent overthrow, and that being the only path to a peaceful resolution for all these countries internationally. And war is ugly and terrible and something to be avoided if at all possible. And yikes at the possibility of any kind of civil war or this turning into a violent armed conflict. I think we're very quick to, with other countries, say, we don't like that regime. They're doing something bad. Human rights abuses, regime change, which only ends up causing millions displaced, all sorts of other harm happening. All of that we tune out of the year after our troops are withdrawn, or while they're even still there. And so, yeah, I'm scared of this.
Go into the regime change with good intentions. That's
like the Uyghurs,
We're
right?
not, yeah.
We just left
Yeah.
them. The Kurds and the Uyghurs were just like, see you later.
But I feel like that rhetoric has sort of seeped into the popular imagination, where we're like, regime change. When that's a lot of violence, that's a lot of human cost, and I don't think we know that cost.
So I think the problem that we're facing is
excuse me.
The Republican Party has an ideology that's bankrupt, right? Its goal is basically to make the rich richer, the poor poorer. It's now become the racist party, the xenophobic party, the fascist authoritarian party. So it's desperately trying to hold on to power, and it has enough money and enough bankers backing it, because all they care about is their taxes. They don't care about anything else. But we've reached a point where we now have a political party in the United States whose sole objective is to cheat every step of the way. So earlier there was a question, which was how do we fight this? So one of the things that we have to do is we have to become more vigilant about blocking the cheating. So there's no doubt there was cheating in the 2000 election. There's no doubt there was cheating in the 2002 and 2004 election. The Russians totally interfered with the Chinese and the Emiratis and the Israelis in the 2016 election. When we see cheating events like that, we need to get involved. We need to protest. We need to write letters to our Congress people. We need to vote people out of office. There needs to be something done. In 2008, Barack Obama, and for that matter, Hillary Clinton in the primaries, broke all sorts of crazy records. I'll just give you an idea what I mean by that. In March of, so the 1992 presidential election, so H. Ross Perot, Bill Clinton, and George Bush Sr. combined, they spent $50 million running for the office of the presidency. In March of 2008, so it's the primaries, and I'm just doing 1 month. It's the most important month of the primaries. Well, maybe February is. Those are the two most important months. John McCain raised $11 million, which is a lot of money for 1 month worth of raising. 90% of that money came from big donors and corporations. 10% came from small donors. Hillary Clinton, $33 million. Those two combined in 1 month made $44 million, whereas the 16 years earlier, the entire presidential campaign was $50 million. Right, they're at 88% of an entire year worth of presidential campaigning. She blew out all sorts of records. 80% of her money came in the form of small donations, 20% in big donations. The Republican Party freaked out. George Bush Sr. produced 5 times more dollars than Al Gore did in 2000. And here's Hillary Clinton 1 month producing 3 times more than John McCain. The Republican Party path to victory was money. And here, all of a sudden, a Democrat is producing more money than the Republican. Obama, $55 million. He produced more money than Clinton and McCain combined, than the entire 1992 presidential election with all 3 candidates. And he did it in 1 month. 90% of his money was small donations. 10% was from big donors.
Yeah.
Bernie too, right? I mean, he's got a whole bunch of small donations and got enough to run. How much did he make? Bernie.
Oh yeah, sure. Absolutely. So here's what the Republican Party decided to do. They decided to overturn McCain-Feingold, which was the bill that had been passed just a few years earlier with an attempt to make the United States less corrupt by getting rid of some of the big money. And Citizens United, January 2010, in time for the November election in 2010. And the next thing you know, the Republicans are capturing state houses. The Republicans are capturing the United States House of Representatives. And it's because the Supreme Court basically just interceded and cheated on behalf of the Republican Party. And the American public just slept through this. It's one of the worst Supreme Court rulings ever. It literally said, you can buy your own senator if you're rich enough. And then, as if that's not enough, North Carolina had overwhelmingly voted for Obama. in part because after years of working against North Carolina's Jim Crow anti-voting suppression laws, the federal government had finally ripped them up enough that Black people could show up and vote in their own state. And with the with the Voting Rights Act of 1965 and as part of this as the background. And what did the Supreme Court do? Shelby County v. Holder, 2013, where they overturned the federal government's supervisory role over the states. And the American public slept through this. And since then, states like Georgia and Texas and North Carolina have become like Russia under Putin. We've had so much voter suppression. We have rigged elections. The United States is losing its status, according to The Economist, as a democracy because our elections are rigged. And people are always pointing to Putin going, what an evil guy. Dude, look at home. We're here doing it. But what does the American public do when we get Shelby County v. Holder? Nothing. And that's the matter. So if you want to know what to do, you have to start paying attention to these things. These massive cheating events can't be ignored. If you want to have a democracy, you have to pay attention. You have to engage. You have to protest. You have to write letters. You have to vote.
Yeah, I actually love that you're talking about this because I feel like this is what the last 4 years of Trump has done. It has changed, and I keep seeing this, and it keeps getting, again, I'm going to go to the run-of-the-mill liberal news agencies, and NPR is one of those, right? It just seems like there is an awakening. There is an awakening. I'm not saying it's as good as it needs to be, but I like to listen to them because that's where the pulse of the nation is. This is where we can see, okay, what are they talking about? Are these things being exposed? Or is the public hearing about this? And not just once, because that's what they usually do. Some news just one day, no. Analysis, day after day, week after week. Like making a big deal out of these things. Yeah. That's all I got.
Well, seems like as good a place as any, huh?
Yeah, I think we haven't heard closing remarks from Roy Peace though yet, have we?
No.
Yeah, we're good. Yeah, I was good. I like what, but as Shay said. On that matter.
I second that.
Build that analysis, build that
Oh my God,
consciousness over these weeks.
I saw the
Especially with
weirdest
Georgia. Yeah.
city council meeting the other day, just to throw this out there, where this guy wanted a second on a really, I wish I'll send it to y'all later, on a fairly racist motion. And he kept going, can I get a second? Nobody would answer. Can I get a second? And they sat there for almost 30 minutes waiting for a second and nobody would do it. And finally they're like, I'm leaving. So it sounds like city council meeting. What?
Can somebody show the picture of the Georgia signing with the picture in the background? I want to see that.
Oh,
in
did you
front
see
of the what was he standing in front of? He was standing in front of something that was
It's just a depiction of a plantation, right?
Yeah,
right.
That was it. Going to share a screen. Hold on a sec.
You got it over there.
Okay, I got it.
Oh my goodness.
We were like the tackiest country ever.
Did you see that they arrested Representative Park Cannon? All she was doing is knocking on the governor's door.
Yes.
Yeah.
What in the
Oh my God. Is there any way you can enhance that background?
Wait, I don't feel like
not a window.
Zoom and enhance.
It worked, did it? Did it?
That's just like a picture of a plantation.
Yeah, it's just a picture of the plant. So you guys are seeing it?
Yeah, it's like, hey,
on our screen it doesn't show it correctly. I don't know what's happening.
I wonder what we could put, what picture we should put behind this.
Concentration camp.
White men in their suits standing looking.
Yeah, I'm surprised they're more Gone with the Wind feel there.
Yeah, or the slave ships, those you know,
Amistad. Yeah, picture.
the cartography, those that
Amistad is its own issue. We could do a whole show on that. You know, they had some real issues, you know, poor all those black folks were just savages until Jesus came along
Oh
and
my
they learned about
God.
the Bible.
I mean,
All
to me, this
right.
picture represents the Republican Party in
in
perfection.
a
It's
nutshell.
7 white men, and what are they doing? They're commemorating the signing of, with a Confederate flag in the background, because right, Georgia's flag
Yep.
is basically the Confederate, not the battle flag, but it's the state flag of the Confederacy. And then there's the plantation, and it's like this desperate attempt to hold on to this myth of the 19th century being a fantastic time.
Well, it was for white dudes.
Yeah.
Make America great again. This is Make America great again right here.
Make America 19th century again.
Mm-hmm.
You could really put a different picture in the back, you know, in the back of that for all kinds of things and have all these white dudes signing it, like a picture of women dying from bad abortions in the back alley, you know, white guys signing an anti-abortion bill. It's just so perfect, all the white dudes. Oh, picture of the plantation.
Yeah, it's something about the coherence of the image, right? Like that painting happened to be there. This is something we were commemorating all along. The Confederate flag, Georgia's flag happened to be there. This is something we're all along. So of course, it's only natural that the piece of legislation reflect that, right? This is
they chose
yeah.
that picture.
The Callaway Plantation.
All right.
This is the problem folks have with feeling discomfort of any kind. Like everything's got to be rosy and everything's got to be pleasant and nothing, you know, no unpleasantries, no lack of discomfort.
Yeah. In this next week, then, do we invite our listeners to lean into their discomfort? Think about their own prognostications of the Civil War.
Oh yeah, that's impending.
Let's not do that. Let's do like Czechoslovakia did. Just all right, let's get a divorce. They separated. It's great.
How are we gonna separate here?
We just give the middle to the red, and then the blue goes to.
Oh no, I don't want Florida. Please give Florida to the red.
No,
I can't.
That's red.
Having an East and West country doesn't work out so well.
Well, why don't we unify with Canada? We'll give the 3 middle provinces, the crazy Canadian provinces, to the red thing, and then the rest of Canada, and then we'd be U-shaped. It'd be upside down U.
That's very Man in the High Castle-y.
Yeah, I know. He watches that show.
I did watch that show.
Did watch
that. Dick is the bomb. Come on now.
The show was interesting before Trump was elected. Afterwards, it became torture. It was like, geez, I wanted fantasy, not reality.
Right?
The only difference was our uniforms suck compared to those, because those were really, the Nazis really, I mean, they.
Hey, you want to know what uniform really sucks?
Your uniforms, they're gonna look good.
I think Ramesh has tried to like end the show.
In this, I would like to say that the worst,
it's becoming a
the worst costume, the worst outfits ever are the Handmaid's Tale. I just want to say that.
All right.
Those are worse. Those are worse.
If we have no other outfit remarks from Roy Peace, or yeah, any sort of, you know, if there's a particular outfit or army you would like to highlight, speak now or hold your peace.
I hate suits.
For me,
my mother just got this published. My mother just wrote a murder mystery, you guys, and it was just
that's
published.
Awesome.
Congrats.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it is a really good book. So if you got nothing to do, get it on Amazon and read a mystery that's set in Austin, by the way.
Oh wow, cool.
For those who are listening, give them the title and the author so they can look it up.
It's called Designed for Murder, an Alice Ann mystery by Susan Tolson. Susan Tolson, Toalson, and it's available on Google and Amazon right now, and I'm sure more. And I'm trying to get her to do an audiobook, but it's so well written. It's really, really good. So there you go.
Awesome.
Exciting.
Yeah. My thing was, when you asked me, it was about Amazon.
Was it?
I was going to say, it was, when Ramesh asked me. I was gonna say, make sure you're staying tuned into what Bessemer, Alabama is doing. Go to their Twitter, BA Amazon Union. Go check them out. Help them, support them in any way you can.
Wasn't the
You can
book
get it.
26?
Google Books also.
I think so.
Yeah.
Maybe.
What was the result? Do you know?
I don't know. I need to go look. Yeah, I gotta find it.
I should have been paying attention too, because I actually think this is a moment when labor might come back in the United States.
Yeah, exactly. And apparently Biden's doing good on this one. So I'm not a Biden guy, but yeah, apparently he's good on this one. Yeah. We'll have to see. Exactly. We'll have to see.
And Biden called the Georgia law a Jim Crow law.
Yeah, he did.
His words.
Wow.
A Jim Eagle. Oh no, the other one was the Jim Eagle.
What's Jim Eagle?
All right, we're
The new
All right.
ones are Jim
Bye.
Eagle.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
See y'all later.
Ah, that was great.